was the first single family home, 3-bedroom, 1-bath in south of Atlanta. And the place was rented at $750 a month. And it's really interesting to see how things change over time, because that same house today is probably worth about $200,000, and it's rented. It's under market right now. It's rented at $1,300 a month, and the actual market rent would have been about $1,500. But I have a long-term tenant in there who's doing really good and taking care of the property really well, so I'm giving her a discount. But our second property, and this also kind of was the sign of times, we bought it. It was a property that was built in, I believe, 2006, and we bought it for $50,000, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. That place was rented at $750 at the time, and is now about to be released at $1,650 or so. So we kept going from there. Bought another 3 houses after that, and bought 3 more duplexes, and then we bought 3 duplexes in Indianapolis after that, 1 in Pittsburgh, and after we moved to upstate New York, we started buying more rentals here. But that's when we really kind of discovered our true passion, which was flipping houses. We still keep our rentals. We love our rentals, but flipping houses kind of became our new passion. It's something we've always wanted to do, and a chance to do that when I left my W-2 job at the beginning of 2021. But I don't have any kind of a presentation or anything like that. Yeah. I wanted to see if you guys had questions about anything I can answer. I can tell you more about what we do with flipping houses, but if anybody has any questions so far, let me know.
Yeah, no, for sure. I figured I'd kind of be the moderator a little bit. So, yeah, so you guys left California, went to upstate New York. So what are you guys, what's kind of your day-to-day look like right now as you are, kind of running your, I guess I would call it a business at this point. So do you guys kind of have a project, take it cradle to grave and then look for your next project? Or you guys kind of, how does that look right now?
We most of the time we're doing multiple at a time. If we have only one at a time, we start getting nervous, because we know that it takes several months to flip a house. So we sold 6 of them last year, and then this year I think we're going to be at 9 buildings sold among 6 different properties. I say that because we have we actually got some of the properties that we got under contract were multifamily properties. We have a 5-plex. We have a house that also had a duplex in front of it that we just sold about a month ago, and we sold 3 duplexes in Indianapolis as well. So we're kind of in single family and multifamily space as well. Some of them we will sell directly to investors, and some we will sell to just families looking to move in.
Right. Nice.
That's our bread and butter today. I mean, it's kind of an interesting story, because when we were leaving California, I left my W-2 job, and we realized, okay, now we can live pretty much anywhere, because as you can see, you can invest anywhere you want. You can live where you want, invest where it makes sense, right?
Right.
I would recommend that for rentals. I wouldn't recommend it for flipping houses unless you're partnering with somebody on the ground. But we took a few months traveling from Southern California through the country and to kind of see where we want to end up, and we ended up in upstate New York just because of family. But that was a fun trip. We bought an RV. I don't know if you remember seeing that, but it took a few months.
Yeah, man, I was envious. It looked cool.
It helps clear the head and kind of see where you want to go from there.
Yeah. So at the point when COVID hit, what kind of rental income was it? Something that could completely replace your W-2 income at that point, to where you're like, okay, yeah, why would I not jump into this venture and go flipping? Or was it kind of like a little bit of, oh, okay, I got a little bit of ground to make up to supplement my income from what I'm making now? How did that look like? What was that kind of?
Yeah, I wasn't at a point where I could replace. But first of all, I had a really good job with. I was a director of purchasing for a large grocery chain for our West Coast operations. So I did that for 15 years. So that was the job that kind of helped me get started in real estate, start buying these properties and so forth. I was not at a point where I could replace my entire income with our rentals, but I had enough knowledge and connections to be able to start in a flipping business, to start wholesaling and flipping, and have that make up the difference. So that was kind of a no-brainer. I mean, I started with wholesaling at first, and it was funny because I was finding good deals, and then it was hard finding the buyers for them. And
Yeah.
the way that I got into flipping was that my buyers were saying, "Nah, this deal doesn't make sense." And I was like, I know for a fact it makes sense because I analyzed it. I know exactly what the ARV is going to be. I don't exaggerate the ARV ever. And I knew exactly what the rehab was going to be. So we did the flip, and we made 52,000 on the first flip. You know, the same flip that I had 3 buyers telling me, "Oh, no, I wouldn't touch it." And we made 52,000. So I thought, well, I could keep wholesaling and try to convince guys to buy my stuff, or I could just flip it myself and make money on every one of them. So we've done the first one, we made 52, the second one about 40, the third one we made 80, fourth and fifth we were kind of in the 45 range, something like that. But the area that we're in is really good because we have a lot of houses. Most of the houses here were built in the late 1800s or early 1900s. A lot of houses need rehab, and there's a big military base that's right next to us, and that really helps because there's about 25,000 soldiers there, and every 4 years they're moving to a different base, so they're just moving in and out constantly, and that creates a demand for housing.
Yeah. So what's the average 3.2 in that area go for?
Probably your median price is about 180. You know, you compare that to California, you can probably get a shed for that much over there. But
Yeah.
you know, a typical house here will go for about 180 to 200. We currently have one on the market that the ARV, we have it at 475, and that was under contract to sell currently. We sold one at 365 just recently and this is really interesting for people in California, but 365,000, and the house is sitting on 69 acres of like wooded land, and completely remodeled. You know, new roof, new paint inside out, new flooring, new fixtures, bathrooms, everything. So.
Oh yeah, we have plenty of those in California. That's for sure.
Yeah, if you play Monopoly or something, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because it's kind of an area where what we do makes sense, and there's definitely a lot of demand for it. We've also had, you know, several properties that we sold to investors because somebody might be living in California, and you know, maybe they're looking for a 4-plex, they're looking for a 5-plex or a duplex, whatever it may be, and they want to pay, you know, 180 to 250,000, whatever it may be, and you know, that works out really well because these units, you know, they cash flow, and we go in, we remodel them, we put the tenants in there, and we sell them as turnkey properties. Yeah, I mean, turnkey rentals is kind of my specialty. So if anybody ever wants to know more about those or is looking for them, I'm the source for it. I have an unlimited source of turnkey rentals.
Yeah. So when kind of the tail end of when I would go to Pete's events, he definitely started his own kind of syndication, you know, doing these deals and saying, "Hey, I've done all the work. It's all renovated, mechanical, plumbing, you know, at least good condition. And it's good to go. Here's your tenant. You know, do you want this turnkey property at this type of cash on cash return?" So good to see that you're still doing that.
Yeah, I'm actually helping a friend of mine. I'm helping him get a 1031 exchange completed. So he is currently going through a 1031 exchange because he owned a rental in Southern California that he's currently selling, and I think he's selling it for something like 800,000, 850, something like that was the listing price. Doesn't owe a lot on it, so he is doing a 1031 exchange, and it works really well because with my connections and friends, I was able to get him a $2 million portfolio of properties that he's going to buy with the proceeds from this sale, because you only need about 25% down to buy several houses, right, at the same time. So he's going to avoid paying any capital gains tax on that sale. And because it's, we're very flexible in how we work with the buyers, he has time for that, and his 1031 exchange company can make sure that everything is going according to plan, and that he doesn't end up having any kind of a tax hit.
Right. No, it's good.
Yeah, it works out for him because he goes from having one rental to having 10 rentals pretty quickly.
Exactly. You always want to trade up.
Yep.
All right. So we got a question from the crowd here. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can hear.
I don't actually hear it, so you just have to repeat it for me.
Yeah. So he's asking, what's the cash on cash look like for some of the deals that you set up for investors at a 20 to 25% down payment?
Well, the way that I always look at it is everybody has like a slightly different way of calculating it. When I look at the turnkey companies around the country, I've really never trusted any of them because they always give these pro forma statements that are just complete baloney, and it just doesn't make any sense at all. And they always underestimate the costs of operating those properties. They always overestimate the income from them. What I can promise our investors is that they're always going to have that coveted 1% rule or higher, a lot of times higher than 1%, in areas that are not war zones. And so you want to, cash on cash return will vary by property, and no matter what it shows on paper, it can be lower, it can be higher than whatever you're projecting. So I know that my cash on cash return will always depend on my entire portfolio and not just one property. So
right. So you're saying the 1% rule is if the property is $200,000, you expect a $2,000 a month rent, right?
The 1% rule works up until about $140,000 purchase price or so. Once you're past the $140,000 purchase price, the 1% rule falls apart, and it's for good reason, because if you're talking about a property that goes from $70,000 to $140,000, that 1% rule works really well. But once you start getting into houses that are $160,000, $180,000, $2,000, you're not going to hit that 1%. And it's because those are much nicer houses in much better neighborhoods with much more stable tenants. Think of it this way. If you buy a house in California for $800,000, are you going to expect to get $8,000 a month in rent? It's unlikely that somebody's going to pay you $8,000 a month in rent. That's why the 1% rule works from about $70,000 purchase price to about $140,000. And most of the houses that we will sell as a turnkey are in that range. You're going to get significantly higher than 1% if you're looking at the multi-units, the fourplexes, fiveplexes that we sell. We were actually we had a fiveplex recently that was $250,000. And the total income from that property was $3,300 a month between the units and the laundry and everything. So, and that property is really well maintained as well. And we actually ended up keeping it. It's a great property, and every property that we sell is the type of property that I would keep for myself if I wasn't in a hurry to make money. Because honestly, any property we sell,
if you could keep them all, you would, right? That's the bottom line.
Yeah, but not at this time, right? Because well, here's why: is because if you're looking for rental properties, right, you want to get that 1%. You want to get that, and also to be careful that it's in a good area, because you can get 3% in areas of Detroit or whatever, where you might have a terrible neighborhood where everything's boarded up, right? You don't want that, but you're looking for that 1%. At the same time, you have to understand that when you have rentals, that's a long game, right? That's your retirement. That's your 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you're going to have this income. Your loans are going to be paid off and so forth, right? Rentals are not going to get rich quick. Rentals are not going to get you $200,000 or $300,000 in a year, unless you've been doing it for many, many years.
Right.
So for us, I might have a great duplex for 180,000 that rents at $2,000 a month, and that's over 1%, and that's a great duplex. And like you said, well, maybe I would want to keep all of them. In this case, I wouldn't, because I want to sell it. I want to make 60, and I want to do another 10 of them, and I want to keep selling them and keep making that 60, and then use that to buy more rentals in the future.
Right. Yeah. I would say the ones that make sense to where you're putting little money into the project after you do the financing. It's a little tougher now that numbers are a little bit different, but yeah, if you can do, quote, zero money out of pocket at the end of the day, once you do your financing, then yeah, those are awesome deals, because it's like you did the legwork, you got an asset for quote free, and why would you not add it to the portfolio, right? So yeah,
we've done that, but it's definitely like when it comes to the actual math on it, it completely makes sense as a rental property, but at the same time, the way I think of it currently is it would take me 5 years to make in cash flow what I make in 3 months with that flip.
Right.
So it's a different strategy. That doesn't mean that flipping is better than holding. We do both. I mean, I have 20 something rental units between me and my partner. We have 60 something rental units, but we're doing both currently with a focus on flipping, because we're still in that growth stage. And as we get closer to some kind of a retirement, then we're going to focus more on rentals.
Right. So how was it for you? Because I come from the contracting world. I know how it is doing construction, and it's not for everybody. You already had, experience managing your rentals and getting some repairs done here and maybe some, larger projects. Not sure how many larger projects you did with your rentals prior to what you do now. How was that jump for you going from, I'm, more of a buy and hold investor, and now I'm flipping, managing contractors, getting them from A to B on taking an ugly house to a good house? How was that transition for you?
Well, it's a learning experience. I mean, week to week, you learn week to week. If I was keeping a journal, I think I would be able to look back every single month and go, wow, that guy from a month ago, they had no idea what he's doing, right? So you learn very quickly. We bought several houses pretty quickly. We worked on them right away. We had, we experimented with contractors, because the only way to find them is really trial and error.
Yep.
We went through several of them, found one good one that was.
And when you see them in the neighborhood, you stop by and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And you get their contact, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I've taken so many pictures of trucks, like you wouldn't even believe. Like every time I'm at a stoplight somewhere, or somebody's driving by, or we're getting out of a grocery store, and I'm snapping pictures of all these trucks with logos on them. But yeah, you have to really do some trial and error and go through a few of them and find what works. We found that it just, you learn way faster, because with rentals, again, we had all of them professionally managed. We've never really had to be directly involved in all of it. The rehabs that we did were fairly light. I mean, on a rental, if we bought a rental house, we'd probably put in like $5,000 to put in new carpets, new paint, spruce some things up and get it rented out. Whereas with flips, we bought a property for 110 and we put like 180 grand into it. So those type of things can happen with flipping, and it's normal. Some houses you almost have to rebuild in a way. Yeah, and that's fun. It's really fun to see the massive transition from the way it was to the after, photos and videos. We have some of those examples on TikTok.
Nice. Oh, so you have a TikTok account?
Yeah. We had more time for it in the beginning, but no, I think it's just like a willpower thing. I mean, I'd rather, we go to these properties, and my wife used to come with me all the time. She would take all the videos she was putting on TikTok, and it's fun. We'll start it again, but I personally don't take the videos. So if she doesn't come with me, we don't upload.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, definitely. Yeah, go ahead.
So in regards to today's interest rates,
Yeah.
And in regards to interest rates, you still get positive leverage on these 2 to 4 units. So 4 unit, 3 unit, you get positive.
So yeah, I think what you're trying to say is based on today's interest rates where they're at now, if you had to get a fresh loan, reset to today's rates, you're not assuming financing at like 3 or 4 or whatever. Are you seeing positive cash flow in your market with multifamily properties based on today's rates?
I absolutely am. I mean, for us, things are kind of different now because we have some properties that we, like you said, put almost nothing into. The majority of my rentals are still in Georgia, and those are all at a 5.5% rate currently, which in June of 2025, I'm going to refinance. A little nervous about that one, but I'm at a 45% loan to value ratio, right? So
yeah. So Pete, real
if
quick,
my rate goes to 11%, like I'm fine, you know.
Yeah. So why did you say June 2025? Because I was literally just telling the group 2025 is going to be the year that you want to lock in great financing. Maybe for you, it's a 5 unit or, quote commercial unit to where you have to roll it over as far as your financing. But why do you say June 2025?
Well, for me, it's a portfolio of properties. And the reason why I say June 2025 is because I am on a portfolio commercial, loan for that Georgia portfolio. So that's going to be June of 2025 is my release date, where I don't have to pay any type of penalty for refinancing. Because typically, you buy a house, a rental, or whatever, you can refinance that anytime you want normally.
Right.
If you have a commercial type portfolio loan, those usually have a clause in there that if you refinance within a year, you pay X% penalty. If you refinance in your second year, it's lower, third year lower, and after 5 years, you can do whatever you want without any penalty, right?
Right.
So I would never pay a penalty, so I'm going to refinance in June of 2025.
Well,
why did you say about the rates? I really like the sound of that.
Yeah, so that's great. So I'm gonna pull this up really quick. So as I was mentioning to the group here before, this is the futures curves on rates. They change with different economic data that comes in, and it jumped a little bit higher, but the trend is obviously still in place. After the GDP got revised, I think it got revised from like 1.3 to like 2 something. So it jumped up a little bit, but you can see that 2025 is kind of the flatline curve. So your June 25 is like lining up great with the way that the futures curves is looking up. So
perfect. Yeah, and with appreciation that happened in Atlanta over the last several years, the nice part is like when refinancing that loan, I'm going to take a couple of properties and I'll take them out of the lien, and then I'll just refinance the rest of the portfolio and keep the same. I want to keep the same loan balance, but just take a couple of properties out of it so they're no longer under a loan.
Right. That's good.
It gives you options if you ever want to do a 1031 exchange or whatever, you can take one out. Because typically with portfolio loans, if you want to do that, there's penalties for that because the underlying collateral has to stay the same. It has to stay as it was when the loan originated.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a lot of questions I can keep answering with Pete. You guys got any you want to get right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Go for it.
How do you source the deals? What type of ARV are you shooting at acquisition?
Yeah. So. Right. So the question is, what are you doing to source your deals? I'm sure it's a big collection of things, other investors, wholesalers, MLS. And also, what are you looking at for, I guess, give us a template ARV price and then back out what a typical rehab and acquisition price needs to be on that.
Yeah, sure. So in our market, and actually, you know what, in any market, your typical target ARV should be whatever the median sales price is in your market. And I say that because the median sales price is your what is the price that most homes in this market are sold at, right? So you might have a market where, you know, there's some houses that sell for $2 million, but most houses maybe sell at 800, with a few that sell at a lower price. But you want to be in the ARV range where most houses tend to kind of sell in that range for your market. So for our market here, you're talking about 180 to 200. Now we don't pass on a deal. So if we have a great deal, we bought a house for 300 and we put 45,000 into it and sold it at 475. That's fine. But those type of houses, the reason why you want to be in that range is because you're more likely to be able to flip it quickly and sell it quickly. So if you go kind of a more luxurious route, it might take you a little bit longer to sell it. Or if you go lower, it may not be the type of house that most people are looking for.
Right.
So in our market, 200,000, 180, that's pretty normal. We pick them up a lot of times cheap. It kind of depends on the house. There's one house that we bought for 168, and we sold it at 320. And the 168 was totally fine because the house only needed about $25,000 of work.
That's awesome. Yeah.
We bought one house for 31,000, and we ended up needing 80,000 of work. We budgeted about 70, so it's a little bit higher than we sold it at 165. It was a pretty quick flip, and that worked as well. So we've done kind of done everything when it comes to ARVs. We've sold them from anywhere from 160 to 475. As far as how we find deals, I've done a little bit of everything. So I don't have a picture of it right now, but on the back of my car, it's there's a sign that says we buy houses and apartment buildings, right? So just the regular letters on the back window of the car, it says we buy houses and apartment buildings. It's got a phone number there that goes to my cell phone. And I've gotten calls, actually one lady that lives in Carlsbad, California, she's 82 years old. And she says, hey, I was in Watertown, New York. Just had to go back, see a friend, see some family. And,
wow.
She happened to have, because she was military before years ago or whatever. And she happened to have the single family home, 4-bedroom single family home with a duplex in front of it. And the property was amazing. The rents were going to be about $3,200 to $3,300 a month. She really was terrible at managing it. She had one horrendous tenant in there. The house needed some work. But anyway, she called the number off the back of my car. She was in town for only 2 days, saw the car, called me. I went to look at the property. It was in great shape on the outside. On the inside, it needed just some cosmetic stuff, flooring and some paint and things like that, a couple of bathrooms. And so I told her, I can offer you 90,000. She said, for the whole package, for the house, for the duplex, everything. The roofs were newer, the windows are already changed. And she said, can you do 95? I said, deal. And so I got all of that for 95,000. And it was great. We really only put about 40,000 into it. We just sold it at 265, which for this area was about right. And that's been great. You don't get phone calls every day from something like that, but when you do get them, they can be pretty good. I've done foreclosure sales where people lose
probates, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's also like tax liens or whatever when they sell those type of houses at the county steps. We've done everything. I've done some cold calling. I've done triple line dialers. I mean, not my favorite, but but it worked well. I found we actually, the first one that we found, I was on the phone for a total of 21 hours over a couple of months, and it was a triple line dialer. I was calling around Alabama at the time. I was calling to Alabama because I wanted to buy some properties there. And after making 4,000 calls there, I didn't like it. Tried Georgia a little bit as well in some areas that I knew. And it was a total of 10,000 phone calls. And the funny thing is, I decided, let's go to my town here. And the fifth person I called got the first deal and made 52,000 with it. And then I looked at my time, and it was like 21 hours of calling. It made 52 grand. It's like, well, that was a good investment. Oh. I don't do it anymore because I just don't like it, but it's another way to do it.
Did you say 4,000 in one day or?
Pete, we cut out for a hot second. So what was that last two sentences you said?
In 2 months, it was 10,000 phone calls, and the way that works is you have a triple line dialer, because typically 1 out of 10 calls will get answered. So the triple line dialer will enable you to call 3 people at the same time. Typically, none of them will answer, and every 3 times you dial or so, you will have 1 person answer the phone, and you end up talking to that person. I would have on my screen everything, like the address, all the information that I need would already pop up on the screen, their name, the address, everything. So that's a part of, I help some people get started in wholesaling, and that's a part of what I teach them there. But I use an aggregator, data aggregator, basically, that shows me lists of all of the properties that are potentially vacant, that are in distress in some way, they're in pre-foreclosure, that have, fines or city or county fines and delinquencies. Excuse me. And and that software is really done really well for me.
Right. So you use, I mean, there's PropStream for finding all the data. There's Mojo Dialer. There's RedX for a dialer.
Yeah. Really Flow for data as well. Mine is mine is PropStream, because I've noticed that like 90% of people that I meet out there are using PropStream for their stuff. Yep. And so it's worked really well. These days I'll still do a cold call, but it's going to be a lot more targeted. I used to do blanket cold calling to everybody that might have some kind of an issue with the house and in the market. I don't do that anymore, even though the result was good, but I prefer to do targeted cold calling. So I'll do some driving for dollars around town, make a list of houses that I'm really interested in, and I'll call specifically those people.
Nice. Have you heard of Deal Machine, Pete? Question from the crowd.
Yeah, it's great. I love Deal Machine. Love it. Yeah, I think annually it's like $1,200 or something like that. But it's certainly worth it. I mean, you have to use it. You have to use it pretty consistently for it to be worth the cost. But even if you get one deal out of it, I mean, it covers the subscription price. So
right.
We were doing Deal Machine as well in the beginning. I think that once we ended up having 6 flip deals at the same time, we just kind of stopped using it. We had to redirect our attention towards completing the deals as quickly as possible and getting them sold.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a good problem to have.
It does come. It comes in waves like that. You may not have a deal for 5 months, and then all of a sudden in 1 month we get a call from 2 different real estate agents saying, hey, I have this client, she's been living in this house for a long time, she doesn't want to list it, it kind of needs some work, and and we end up buying the place, and then another agent calls us and says, hey, I've got this duplex, they don't want to list it. It's amazing how many times people do not want to put their property on the MLS. And you have to be a chatterbox. You have to talk to everyone. Everyone who knows you has to know that you are the guy who buys houses, right?
Yep.
So, because you can talk to somebody and tell them what you do, and they just remember it, and then all of a sudden 3 years later, out of the blue, they call you and they say, I'm ready, and you maybe didn't even intend to buy a house from that person. But people have a lot of unusual reasons sometimes. We're currently negotiating with a lady who has a 17-acre property, and she's got this big, nice garage and workshop, and that used to belong to her husband. But she is negotiating with us for buying this property for like $32,000. But the main reason why is because she doesn't want anyone walking through her house. So she doesn't want anyone walking through her house, and that's the reason why she doesn't want to put it on MLS.
Yeah, I mean, definitely during COVID, I mean, that was a big deal for sure. So
yeah.
And then real quick, we had a question. Yeah, so the question is, Pete, if you have in-house construction guys, and I'm going to say that is guys on like W-2 pay with
Okay.
you? I'm assuming probably no. It's more so that you've got your vendors, you're going to them, and you're saying, hey, all right, cool, you got this job, I got your bid, I'm going to give this project to you.
Yeah, I don't like headaches, and the contractors that work for us, they're not on our payroll. They are not our employees technically, but we have a deal with them that they don't take any other job from anyone else, right?
Okay.
Because we just come to contractors, we tell them, hey, how would you like to have business all the time, every day, 5 days a week, from when you start to when you end your day, and to have it consistently throughout the year and not have to worry about your seasonality, right? Because the contractors, they'll be really hard to get in this market. In California, it doesn't matter, but in this market,
yeah,
contractors are really hard to get
It's-
a hold of from April until September. And then in October, they're calling you, hey, do you have anything? Do you have anything, right? So we just tell them, hey, we'll give you complete security throughout the year, job security of having flips all the way through the year. And as soon as you're done with one, you're starting another. They love that. And I said, the only condition is you can't take any other jobs. No, not a side project, no, nothing. If I call you on Monday at 8 o'clock, you need to be there, right?
Yeah, right. And that does bring up a good point. If he did have guys on W-2 pay, now he doesn't have just one point of contact of, hey, you're the GC, you need to get the job done. It's okay, I've got teammate 1, teammate 2, teammate 3, teammate 4, right? On down the line. And he's got to manage all those relationships with each different person. So it's a good point, Pete.
And we hold them accountable for, the type of projections they give us, the estimates they give us. We hold them accountable for that. And, our contractor, if his employees are slacking for a couple of days and they don't get some stuff done, he'll stay there late that night. He'll paint or whatever needs to happen to make up for his employees not doing the right job. And we have backups. We have contractors that we use that are not exclusive to us, but we also have them as a backup in case something somebody has to jump in and finish a job.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But in
Yep.
flipping, that will always be our biggest. The biggest headache will be finding the right contractors.
Yep. And constantly keeping more in the pipeline. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay. We got one more question here. Yeah, you sounds like you're doing multiple projects in different states at one time, Peter.
Yeah, so the reason why is because we're always looking at multiple exit strategies for every property, right? So we bought duplexes in Indianapolis years ago in 2017. I think we bought them. So we bought 3 duplexes side by side. They were brick duplexes, all identical. They were in really good shape, and we bought them for $275 total. Kept them for I guess 5-6 years, right? And the market went up. The rents kind of stayed pretty stagnant over there. The rents didn't really go anywhere. I think when we bought them, they were like 700, and 6 years later they were 800. So not a huge difference. I mean, in Atlanta, I'm just used to seeing a much bigger jump. And we realized that the market price for a property like that this year was up to about 485. And so we listed the property at 485, and it was under contract for full price within 2 days. So that worked out. That worked out as a flip as well. We just kind of got tired of managing properties in different states. We sold a duplex in Pittsburgh as well that we just had kind of as a one-off. We bought it a while ago. It just kind of came across our desk, and we liked it. We bought it. It doubled in value. We sold it, and we're using that money to invest in properties here locally now, and we're looking for apartment buildings.
Awesome.
How does you manage different contractors, that relationship, with different states?
Yeah. So, question is, Peter, how has it been for you managing different contractors and different projects, in different areas at the same time?
I've never done a long distance rehab without a property management company managing the project. So I've never consciously bought a property with the intention of reselling it in another state, because doing flipping in my own state, doing flipping in my own town where I can drive to a property, I can tell you right now, even doing it that way, there's a lot of trust that has to be there between you and the contractors. And I can't even imagine doing it, a few states over and trying to flip a house in that way. It's just really hard to do that, because you have people telling you that an entire wall needs to be replaced when it really is just like a 1 foot section of drywall that can be cut out and retaped and redone. So the reason why we ended up in multiple states is because we had different deals come across our desk over the last several years, but they were always meant to be rentals, and they were rentals for several years. Most of them we kept, some of them we sold, depending on just market dynamics and what we have going on at the time. I would not recommend, diversifying is fine, but I would not recommend having a couple here, a couple there. If you're going to have rentals, I would have no less than 10 in one state before even considering going somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's a personal preference, though. You end up having to file tax returns in that state. You end up it just complicates things, and it has to be a separate liability insurance policy, because all of my Georgia properties, they have one liability insurance policy, and I can put as many as I want under it. But if you go to another state, it's automatically a new insurance policy you have to buy.
Right. That's a good point.
Which is fine if you're building a portfolio, but just for one property, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, definitely economies of scale too for your effort finding contractors and handyman and.
100%, yeah, 100%. Because you've got another, you got to find a property management company. You've got to find, people you like. The reporting from the property management company. I love when they use AppFolio. I hate when they use Propertyware. Not a big fan of Buildium either. AppFolio is just so simple and easy to understand, and you've got. At one point, we had 4 different property management companies in different states, and you're getting all these different reports, and you have to kind of parse together what each of it means.
Right. Yeah. So, knowing Peter myself, Peter's definitely very persistent. So if you heard him say, "Hey, everyone's got to know that you buy houses," and et cetera, et cetera. Every time I go get a haircut, my barber is like, she wants to get a house so bad, and I'm telling her all these different ways that she can think about it and really wrap her head around it. So I can totally relate on that aspect. Is you definitely need to be just be passionate about it, right? And by a side effect of being passionate about real estate investing and what you do is you're going to talk about it, and Pete wants to share it with everybody else because it has changed the way that he has lived his life, right? And it's been a cool, awesome journey of where you started from where you are now. So
yeah, it's been rewarding because we met a lot of people along the way, and you treat people the right way. It kind of comes back to you. Even the first flip that we did in this area, the lady was, it was a cold call. I talked to this lady. She said, I want to sell my house. And I'm asking, what are you looking to get? She said 100,000. And she said, if I don't get 100,000, then I'll just put it on MLS and I'm going to sell it at 130. I look at the comps and she's right. It would be about 130 probably if she sold it as is without doing anything to it. I went through the house. I walked the house with her, asked her why she was selling. And she was just moving. They were downsizing. She was moving to a different state. They're retired. They're doing fine. They just want to move to a tiny little, tiny home, and it's already paid for, and they want to just live out the rest of their life in South Carolina. I said 70,000. She asked me if I could do 73, and I did. And the interesting part to me was that the biggest selling point to her was not the price, because I always, when I talk to clients, I tell them, hey, we can offer you a fast closing. We can do a cash purchase. We can do, we can cover all the closing costs, and you can leave all the stuff in the house that you don't want. If you don't want furniture or trash or whatever, just leave everything behind that you don't want to take with you. All of those things, they didn't even blink. She wasn't really interested. She wasn't really impressed. But when I told her that we are going to do all the paperwork, her eyes just got big, and that was the biggest selling point for her. And that's how we did that deal. But the reason I'm telling this whole story is because we stayed in touch, and I was kind of keeping her posted about what we were doing with the house. She found it really interesting because she enjoyed seeing this home that they lived in for 20, 30 years, seeing it kind of transform into a modern, like really nice looking house on the inside. She said it's just, she loved it. And within a couple of months, she called me and said, hey, I've got a friend, and she's looking to sell a house, and I wanted to see if it's okay for me to put you guys in touch. And it just the messages that you just have to treat everyone around you as you would want to be treated, and hopefully you're going to get you teach people what you share knowledge with others, and hopefully it comes back to you in the future. From my experience, it has tenfold.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Peter was always very, there was people in the group that said, hey, I want to pay you to mentor me on my real estate, investing. And he's like, well, how about we don't do that and I'll just help you out. And they just kind of looked at him like, what? What do you mean? What are you talking about? So, yeah, Peter was always very.
There was one, actually, the guy you're talking about, that's really funny because I was doing this for several years. I was doing it completely, for free and just doing these meetups. And that one guy came up to me and said, I want to pay you to mentor me. And I told him, how about if I do it for free? And he just kind of like, just kind of stumbled. And I literally never heard from him again. He never called me.
And Pete, a weird thing about that is because it's free and accessible, all of a sudden the value is not the same. When people have to pay for something, the value is, sometimes deemed higher, and so that could have been that type of situation. So yeah. I mean, I'm not today. At some point, my wife was like, "All right, yeah, you have a family too, dude. I'm sick of you having 200 trainees or whatever." But so, but I still I'll still do it sometimes, and But the other guy, I remember in one of our meetups, he came in after one of the presentations, because I used to do the PowerPoints as well, and I was kind of showing them everything and teaching folks about 1031 exchanges, whatever. We had guests over, and at the end of the meetup, he came up to me and he said, "Oh, so what's the minimum?" I'm like, "Minimum what?" He says, "Whatever you're selling, like, how much is it?" I'm like, I'm not selling anything." Oh, that's funny.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Qualifier, what is the qualification criteria?
Yeah, no, it's trust me, as a guy who works with general contractors every day, it is, yeah, it's not easy. So what if you would say a few things that you really look out for, Pete? My biggest thing with a lot of people, and tenants included, is punctuality. So if someone tells me, hey, I'm going to be 5 minutes late, that shows a lot. If they don't say I'm going to be 5 minutes late, automatic red flag. So Pete, what's some of your qualifications when you look at a general contractor or contractor and say, okay, I've got a good feeling about this guy? What's some of the things that you look for?
I'll give you an example. So, one time I was getting a bid on the project, and a guy came in, and it was a paint job for the whole house. And the guy came in, he comes in the living room, he's looking around like this, and he goes, 12 grand, and then I have another, right? But then I have another contractor comes in and he says, okay, give me a second. He's got this laser measure. He's measuring all the rooms and kind of getting the square footage of the house down, and kind of seeing how many breaks he has in the structure, and because you have to cut in, and it takes him a longer period of time.
Yep.
And it gives me a nice detailed quote, and that's the way that they do their quotes is the first indication to me. And number one, showing up at all, because somebody's showing up just to give you a quote, that's already one check mark. That's good. I think that the reason why most contractors end up getting in trouble is because they don't have a steady paycheck, right? So their paycheck happens as the job is getting done. And if they're getting 10 phone calls, they have the tendency to just want to get that 50% deposit from as many people as they can. and lock in that job. Because if they only keep one job and they're waiting until they're done with it, then they're concerned about where's my next paycheck coming from, right? And so I kind of understand it from one perspective there, but too many of them take 10 deposits from 10 different people in all good faith, hoping they can finish all these different jobs, but they end up taking way longer than you would want them to take.
Right.
And of course, there's horror stories out there of like taking a deposit and never coming back with it. That's another one. But
yeah,
but
so
you know.
yeah, so all and I know Peter can attest to this. So one good rule of thumb is you want to pay for work that's in place, right? So you want to pay on a schedule, a series, and don't always agree to their schedule, because if they have a half up front, well, okay, did he get half of the work done up front? No.
Sure.
You know, buying a certain amount of material up front, okay, that's reasonable, but you need to be careful with that too, because at the end of the day, there's still guys who take, you know, large sums of money up front and then skip town or don't talk to you again, right? So,
Yeah, so
you want to make sure
Mhm.
that you're paying on a schedule and that you're paying for work in place. That's very, very common in commercial construction that I do. You know, that's the way that owners protect themselves, to make sure, hey, if this guy goes belly up or leaves or whatever, can't man the job, you know, he's 10 workers get cut to 2, I need to be able to get somebody else, right? That's why you do that on a series of payments.
And I'm not sure if anybody's speaking in the background because I can't hear it, but let me
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So he said, do you check, you know, their insurance, their license?
Yeah,
all that
because
stuff.
we have to make sure they're licensed, bonded, insured. Because if they're not, then you could be fine your entire career just using somebody who doesn't have a license, who doesn't have insurance. The problem is when they fall off the roof, you know, that it might tank your business if they don't have it and you end up getting sued. So we really learned that we just don't want to mess with that. And we do check it, especially when we have roofers. I mean, that's just kind of a big one, because there's a decent chance of someone getting hurt at some point. The other thing that I would mention also about the deposits is, even though 50% down is a pretty standard thing, we found that with most contractors you can kind of negotiate that depending on the size of the project. So if it's a small thing and it's a $5,000 job and they ask you for 2,500 down, we're not really thinking about that. But if it's a job that's going to be a $120,000 remodel, well, I'm not going to give them 60 grand up front.
Yeah.
I'll say, hey, here's 20 to get started. Get some dumpsters out there, start doing some demo. The more work I see, the more you're gonna be able to get your next draw.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I always try to pay them weekly, because that's kind of what their guys are looking for too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it can help them as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our bookkeeper would hate that.
Yeah. So yeah, do want to be respectful of your time, as you are on the East Coast. So got another question here.
Probably more when you got started earlier, and I know in different states they're a lot cheaper than here, but how did he come about and getting the cash, or was what part and you're how do you buy those first problems get into we started?
Right. So your first, let's say 3 flips, Peter, were you using hard money every single time? Were you using your self-directed IRA and funding it all cash? What was your funding source looking like at that point?
Yeah, so when it comes to rentals, it was different. Obviously, I was using just standard loans and all that, 20% down. When it comes to flipping, I was using hard money from the beginning. We don't always do that anymore now, because we have lines of credit with local regional banks. And that works out better for us because there's not as many hard money fees. But initially I was using hard money, and the way that we would do that, we still do it sometimes. We would put 10% down on the purchase price, and that's really amazing because, like I mentioned, a lot of times our purchase price, I mean, you're talking about 50,000, 60,000, whatever it may be. So your 10% down is really low. The downside is that hard money lenders typically they have pretty significant fees, right? The origination points are usually pretty high. The interest rate is always high. So we're looking at probably 10 to 11% interest rate currently, even on our lines of credit, but also on hard money lenders. And we'll end up paying $8 grand for a loan. just to get the loan and to close the loan, you know. And so if you can build up lines of credit so that you don't have to use hard money lenders, that's way better.
Yep, absolutely.
Or if you can use some savings, of course. I would recommend keeping as much of your capital as you can, because we have kind of a hard rule now that we don't use our capital anymore. Like I will, no matter what we're doing with flipping, I will not take money out of my bank account and put it into a house. We will rather pay 11% on a line of credit than take a dime out of our own bank account.
Yeah, I think you build that those lines of credit with banks so that relation.
Yeah. So how did you kind of establish that, Peter, these lines of credit? So you had your, let's say portfolio loan, and how did you kind of build that over time?
Yeah. So it's really interesting. I mean, it's the same thing that, when people tell you, oh, there's no deals out there, for example, right? And I always remember what Brandon Turner said from Bigger Pockets. When people talk about there's no deals out there, he says how many offers have you made, right? And so the same thing goes with lines of credit. If you go to several like regional banks, I'm not talking about like Wells Fargo and Chase, like they're going to laugh at you. If you go to kind of more local regional banks and you talk to them about, I have this business and I would like to get a line of credit, or even a personal line of credit, typically they will approve you for 20 grand fairly easy. Up to 50, they can do unsecured lines of credit. So you could get a $20,000 or $30,000 line of credit without really much of anything. If you have, especially like if you have an income, like they're totally fine with that. And the nice thing about lines of credit is that, number one, to open one, it's pretty cheap, anywhere between $50 and $200. Sometimes they'll even cover that. And if you're not using that line of credit, you're not paying for the interest. If you only use 10% of it, you're only paying interest on that tiny amount. And they can go a long way, because with a typical flip, you're putting 10% down of the purchase price, and we've used those lines of credit for that 10% down. And that's perfectly acceptable. So for us, it's like zero money out of our bank account, and we pay a little bit more interest, but the deal better be a good deal, because our deals can easily cover that extra interest that we pay, and we have a peace of mind, and we have a good position in the bank, so that way, if we ever need to qualify for something else or refinance a property or whatever it may be, we're going to be very well qualified in the eyes of a bank. I forgot the question. Am I answering it?
No, I think you did. So, I mean, generally you want to build credit over time. I mean, you're going to eventually get assets, a little bit higher, whether it's your real estate, your stocks, whatever. And then you're going to start lending against that, right? And you want to lend against it at opportune times. You don't want to lend against that inopportune times, then be on the wrong side of leverage, right? Because leverage will... Right. Leverage is why 2008 happened. Leverage is why the .com bubble happened. Right. So you just want to make sure you're on the right side of that leverage. And so, Peter's, very smart by looking at 2025, and you want to look at opportune times to use your leverage and make sure that you're getting good credit at the right times.
Yeah. Now, I also wanted to mention that you want to go to a few of them. Don't go to one bank and they say, "Oh, no, we can give you a line of credit." Just give up. Go to several banks, and prepare your information. They're all going to want the same thing. They're going to want a couple of years of tax returns. They're going to want your financial information, like here's how much I have in the checking account and so forth. One of my good friends, that's the most successful flipper I know. He's done well over 1,000 flips. I asked him when I started. I said, "Hey, what's the advice you can give me when it comes to flipping houses?" And he said 3 words, literally 3 words. That was his advice, and I thought, okay, well that's pretty simple. He said, "Keep your capital," right? Keep your capital. And it sounded super simple to me. I was like, "Oh, great. I mean, yeah, sure, I want to keep my capital," right? But a couple of years down the road, I realized, wow, I used up a lot of my money to buy these houses, and even though we had great deals, we came to a point where we had a cash crunch, and all of a sudden we needed a couple $100,000 to cover some rehabs and flips and so forth, and we didn't have it. And if you are in that situation and you're trying to get a loan from a bank, or you're trying to get a line of credit, nobody will lend to you, right? So you have to make sure that you're applying for those lines of credit when you don't need them, so that way when you do need them, they're going to be there. And right now we're actually in a situation where my partner and we're going to a few more banks and applying for more lines of credit and having them increase our balances, because we are in a position that they're going to be very likely to say, yes, okay, here's some more lines of credit for you.
Right. Yeah. Just like the contractor, right? His line of business is very cash intensive. Obviously, because he is doing the work, and because you are paying him, your business is cash intensive. So yes, that is absolutely, good advice, because if different projects come along and you can't take them on, that's, money out of your pocket if you had to wholesale it or whatever.
The guy now that went to, I don't know how many banks he went to. It was stupid, but he knew also that they can give up to $50,000 in unsecured lines of credit. So he got 20 different banks. He got a $50,000 line of credit, and he ended up getting $1 million of capital that he could use to do different things. But it's very true. It's true in sales.
Yeah.
It's true in business in general. If you talk to more people, go to more places, and apply to more things, you're going to be more likely to get the approval.
And these are business lines of credit, right? These aren't personal lines of credit.
Yeah, they'll do both. They'll do business lines of credit. They'll do personal lines of credit. When I got my first one, now keep in mind, they also like to. I think the best way to get your first one is, I mean, I'm careful how I say this, but when you have your own personal residence, right? Let's say you wanted to remodel a bathroom in there. You go to a bank and you say, hey, I need $25,000 line of credit because I want to improve the asset that I own or whatever. They love that stuff, right? Nobody ever goes back to see if you updated your bathroom, right? All they care about is they want to know that so that they can get you approved for the line of credit. And for the bank, it's a win because your liability is their asset. So any loan that a bank gives out is an asset for them. For you, it's a liability, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, Pete. I want to be respectful of your time and our schedule too, but you've provided great value for us. And where can people find you if they want to look into some of your syndicated deals that you have out there?
So you can. We're not currently doing syndication, but we are doing turnkey properties for people. We're currently not taking on investors, but we are doing turnkey properties and doing some mentorship and things like that. So club500.us. If you go to club500.us, that's the website, and there's the Club 500 Real Estate Network, which is the meetup that we started back in California. It doesn't have anything on there about our flipping or anything like that, but it does have information about the turnkey deals that are available. My personal email is info@club500.us. So info@club500.us. Cell phone is 949-485-1826. So that's 949-485-1826. Feel free to shoot me a text. You give me a call. If I don't answer, I'll call you back.
Awesome. Well, cool, man. I definitely always appreciated the way that you would put on your meetups. It very was much hey, I'm here to provide value, and I want to. For me, it's almost like an outlet. I try to more or less model mine after what you did as well. I just like talking about these things. It's kind of an outlet for me. That's the way I kind of view it, and definitely help people along the way, especially today. You can read some articles out there and think like BlackRock owns 100% of the real estate in the U.S., and that's just not true, right? Like institutional ownership of real estate, especially in the single family market, is less than 1%, right? So there's just, people get it a little bit twisted sometimes, and kind of, a little bit, I mean, really it's emotion, right? Emotion really drives us, which to different extremes on either side. So and sometimes people kind of have paralysis because of that. So definitely want to do this. Definitely want to do this
always
to
a good
help
time.
people with that.
Yeah, it's always a good time to invest in real estate. Trust me. Like the way I always look at things is if you can tell yourself that 20 years from now, looking back, that's going to be the decision that you wanted to make, then that's the right decision, right? Because people look at interest rates now at 7% and everybody freaks out. But in 1983, there were 17% interest rates on a 30-year fixed mortgage, and
Right.
that was pretty normal back then. And my first house that I bought, it was at 8%, and I thought it was a steal. So 7% historically is still not crazy, and I think it's still a really amazing time to invest in real estate. Time's on our side.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. Well, cool, Peter. I appreciate you jumping on and sharing with us all the way from the East Coast, 3 hours ahead of us. And it's really good to hear that you guys are doing well.
Thank you, guys, and thank you, Thomas. Anything for you, man. I'll do it again anytime you want.
Very cool. Very cool. All righty. Well, thanks, man. This is going to go on my YouTube. I'll shoot you the link when I get this uploaded. So
perfect. Yeah, cut out the whole microphone thing at the beginning, okay?
Yeah. We will do.
All right. We'll see you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Bye.
Cool. So yeah, we kind of wrap up a little bit. We always kind of break for networking at the end. So yeah, again, Peter was one of the guys who kind of inspired me. It's obviously his operation is out-of-state rentals. He never did anything in California. He even, I think he rents it here in California when he was here. So he's always looked at the cash flow states, right? Like Alabama, Georgia, Indianapolis, different areas like that. So
Why do you call them cash flow states?
if you run the numbers, the cash flow is much better, right? So if I take, like, let's say the house that I just got my client, at 660, by the time they rehab it, it's 700. He's talking about 1% rule on a house that's like 150, right? And so they're getting 1,500 in rent. You're not going to get 7,000 in rent. That same 1% rule doesn't apply. And obviously, you're going to run, okay, what's my financing? What's my rent? Yada yada. But basically, a 3-2, which is a standard home, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 square feet, which is run of the mill size. When you look at houses out there in Dallas and Houston, whatever, I mean, you're paying so much less. And then when you quick financing, your cash on cash return is much better if you're just taking a standard place, right? So I've got a friend who, he flips a lot of homes here in Southern California. He's already amassed, a good sized portfolio because he started like right at the bottom in, 2012. But he primarily flips and things that are really good. He'll hold, but he has to develop it. He has to add a unit or add an ADU or take a duplex and make it a quadplex. Things like that, right?
Yeah,
so
that's
so one question I did want to ask Pete is, hey, what's your edge? Are you looking at any way you can kind of force value on these things? Obviously, he's forcing the value by taking a fixer and making it nice. You're forcing value there, but I definitely like, coming from my background is, hey, let's build. Let's add some units, let's add some square footage on this thing. So, and you really got to do that in this market right here in California, right? And why wouldn't you? My good buddy and his wife, I just got him a place in Norwalk, and it's got a detached garage. And it's actually a pretty good sized detached garage. It's got like an extra, 6-8 feet on the side. And I'm like, dude, once you guys are ready to upgrade, because gonna have a few kids, don't sell this house. You're gonna hold it. I'm gonna help you convert this garage. It's gonna be a 2-unit. And now you get your bigger house, and then you got a rental property at the same time. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's one of my biggest regrets. I'm 33 now. I'm not that old, but as I sold my first 2 homes that I had, it would have been a lot better if I would have kept them rather than selling them. I didn't like sell them and $7 million fire and reinvest in something else for it. But which you would have kept them. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So. Yeah.
How you doing? Sorry, I was late, guys.
Yeah.
Baby shoes. Are you familiar with subject twos?
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on those?
Well, so a lot of people are talking about subject twos right now because if you can get a subject to the existing financing, right? The existing financing is going to be the financing that we've seen the past like 10 years, hopefully 3, 4, 4.5%. Yeah, and it's a great deal. But just like what Pete's doing, you got to get on the phone, knock doors, talk to realtors. And then to be honest, you're not going to get the best deals from realtors, in my opinion, because, I get texts all the time as a realtor because they can just go in the MLS, get a big old Excel sheet of all these realtors' emails and numbers. That's what they do. And they'll just blast out the text. Hey, first name brackets. Hey, Thomas. Hey, Matt. Hey, I'm looking for a fixer. This is what we do. Da, da, da. And I always tell them, hey, dude, if I was going to find an awesome fixer, I'd keep for myself, just to let you know. Just being transparent. Like if I was going to, something that's below market to where, you can force the value really easily. And if you have the know-how to do construction, yeah, it's a slam dunk. Why would you not keep it for yourself, right? So, yeah, you can get it. It's not going to be easy though. So, I mean, if you want to go for something like that, I mean, you got to be out there counting the phones, and you got to find the right seller for it. Because at the end of the day, they're still on the hook with the loan, and they have to trust you to make the payments every single month to the bank while they're still on the loan. Let's say it's like, hey, you're going to be on this loan for like 5 years. It's like they kind of just met you, but as long as you, like really work it with them and say, like, if they really trust you, then yeah, it can be done. So.
You get subject to different scenarios also. So, like trying to sell a current property, pretty subject to, or
Me? Just curious. I'm literally just starting out. I'm trying to understand a different type of strategies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's can definitely be done. It's it's definitely a lot more rare than just typically saying, hey, I'll pay off your loan and now the house is mine and you're good to go. That happens much more often than.
I didn't know if it was like some sort of like a trend going on. Like those.
I've been hearing it more and more. To me, I felt like it was a trend.
Yeah, so you'll hear it a lot in like a commercial real estate space because that's like very common. Just because like those guys are bigger players and it's like, hey, if I kind of know who you are, like you didn't just get into commercial real estate overnight, like you amass a little bit of wealth and if I gotta sue you, I can do it, not that they go to